Hi, welcome to Lead at Any Level Live. I'm Amy C. Waninger, your host and the founder and CEO of Lead at Any Level. I'm so glad to be with you today. Today, I want to talk about why adapting to change is critical for inclusive leadership. And there are really 4 reasons that this is important. And before I get into all of that, though, please let me know in the chat where you're watching from and on what platform you're watching. I would love to give you a shout out in the comments, and I'd love to know what questions you have about responding to change in your own organization, because this is a topic that comes up frequently. I presented on this just last week at True U in Indianapolis, and later this week I'll be presenting in Detroit for the Women's Business Conference for business owners and business leaders around how to adapt to change. So I know this is top of mind for a lot of different folks right now, especially as we go into yet another season of, unknown around the pandemic and, what's coming next. But also as we kind of head into an inflationary recession and, the threat of stagflation. There are just a lot of unknowns going into this season. So let me just give you 4 reasons why being responsive and adaptive to change is so critical for inclusion in your culture. And the first is really that change causes stress. And stress gives us tunnel vision. Typically, when we're dealing with any new situation or any change, we tend to rely on the shortcuts and the assumptions in our brain, and we tend to ignore anything that's kind of outside of whatever we're focused on at the moment. So all that stuff in the periphery kind of goes away. And we forget, because we're so focused and we're so stressed, we forget to think about other people. We forget to think about other perspectives. We forget even, to be inclusive in those moments because we're so focused on the problem in front of us. The more stressed we are, the more likely we are to rely on the shortcuts, the assumptions, and the stereotypes that, maybe we don't rely on normally, but we're more likely to rely on those when we're faced with change. And change is stress. In fact, the Holmes-Rahe stress inventory, which is kind of a predictor of health impacts of stress, lists change, I think, in something like 75 to 80% of the criteria that they assess. So change causes stress, stress causes tunnel vision, and tunnel vision causes us to be less inclusive of others. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that DE&I initiatives are change initiatives. Every time we want to roll out a new employee resource group or a new awareness month or a new way of being at work, these are change initiatives. And what they do is they essentially ask people to bolt on one more thing to the way they work, the way they think about their work. And again, as a change initiative, this causes people stress. We can only hold so much in our minds at a time. We can only do so many things, juggle so many projects and initiatives at a time. And every time a new D&I initiative comes out, we need to think of it as a change initiative, both from a rollout perspective, but also internally in our responses. So we need to be good at adapting to change so that we can understand, hey, the talent landscape is changing, the market landscape is changing, expectations are evolving, and we need to be able to see ourselves in those changes and adapt the way we work to be sure that we're meeting the needs of the moment. This is a change. Remember, changes are stressful. Stress gives us tunnel vision. So we're adding layers upon layers of stress. The third reason is change comes from everywhere all at once. So if you think about, we're going into the fall, which is open enrollment season. That's one change in your organization. People are going to be expected to take time out of their day to navigate open enrollment, change their benefits, confirm their benefits, add new benefits, take benefits away, prices may be changing, plans may be changing, right? All of that requires a lot of effort on employees' part, on leaders' part, to make sure that this change is rolled out successfully, not to mention the impact on HR, right? This is a huge initiative every year. But there are other initiatives going on as well. You might have a new IT system that's rolling out. You might have end-of-year reviews that are coming due. You may have development planning that's taking place. There may be reorgs going on, any number of changes, right? New products, new services being rolled out. You've got different, financial reporting requirements or tax differences, whatever your organization's experiencing. Probably every department that oversees anything is rolling out some change all the time. Your employees are feeling the impacts of that. And you are probably feeling the impacts of that because, again, we can only spin so many plates at a time and keep them all going. So when change is coming from everywhere at once, that compounds our levels of stress. And that stress, again, causes us to be less inclusive because why? We're relying on shortcuts to get the work done. We're so focused on this change, then this change, then this change. Everything's happening all at the same time. When we're more responsive to change, we're able to navigate that better. We're able to kind of sail through and surf the wave of change rather than fight against it or try to contain it or, try to pick out like, okay, this change affects me in this way and this change affects me in this way. And I need to make sure that I have all these Legos stacked up in the right way. When we're responsive, we just kind of roll with it. And then finally, the reason that we need to be very adaptive to change is because when we are more inclusive during change, when we're actually spreading out our focus and bringing more people in, but we're also ourselves more responsive to changes, we can take advantage of and benefit from the diverse perspectives on our teams because diverse teams are more resilient and more innovative. So diverse teams actually give us more in terms of the ability to be responsive as a group, but also we're able to rely on other people's experiences and stories and their perspectives so that we can see ourselves in the change. We can kind of align, tell ourselves a different story that makes change okay. So those are really the 4 reasons I see why change needs to be sort of a natural part of how we operate as leaders. And why we need to work on building our adaptability because it makes us more inclusive. It gives us more strength to rely on, makes us more resilient. But also it helps us recognize that diversity itself is a change initiative and change is coming from everywhere all the time. Now, I speak on this a lot. I speak on a lot of different ways that people can be more resilient in their work, ways that they can actually, invest in themselves and, double down on self-care and, plan for change and even predict the future. Because if we look around and if we're really relying on our networks and we don't have that tunnel vision, we're not stuck in what we're doing right now. We actually pop up like a meerkat and look around and see who else is going through what they're going through, what's everybody else working on, what's everybody else doing. We can actually start to predict the future, which makes us more innovative and more resilient because we've actually got a plan in place for the changes that are occurring. And this is all stuff that I taught last week that I'll be teaching this week and that I can teach at your organization if this is a struggle for your leaders. And let's face it, this is a struggle for your leaders because everybody's dealing with change and not everyone deals with it well. And having a process that we use to deal with change in general can help even more difficult changes be easier, right? So if this is something that's impacting your working relationships, if it's upsetting the apple cart, in your organization, feel free to put some time on my calendar at workwithlaal.com or visit me at lead@anylevel.com. We can talk about what changes you're going through, why it's a struggle, and how I might be able to help. And you'll definitely walk away from that meeting with some strategies you can implement and hopefully, some long-term things that we can do together to help you be more responsive to change. Now, this week, as I said, is a busy one for me, but I want to tell you what's coming up this week, just, wherever you are on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, that you can tune in and get some skills for inclusive leadership. The first is, let me get there. Hold on. The first is every day this week at 4 p.m. I'll be talking about the 5 benefits of having a diversity council. Now, maybe your organization has a diversity council already. Maybe you're thinking about forming one, or maybe you have ERGs in place, but you don't have a diversity council yet. Some companies implement ERGs or employee resource groups first. Others start with a diversity council and then build their ERGs from there. So wherever you are, I want to share with you every day at 4 p.m. a quick tip for how you can get the most out of your diversity council, if you have one, or how you can get the most out of starting one in your organization. That's every day at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here, wherever you're seeing this. And on Thursday at noon Eastern, you'll want to stick around. You'll want to tune in for the new episode of Including You. I'll be talking to Dr. Angela Alston. She is I believe, the head of nursing education at the Ohio State University School of Nursing. And she's going to be talking about learning structures and how learning structures help her students and faculty adapt and build inclusion at all levels of the campus experience for the nurses and for ultimately the hospitals and organizations where the nursing students will eventually work. It's a fascinating conversation and you won't want to miss it. That happens Thursday at noon Eastern on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, wherever you are watching this video right now. And then if you don't want to catch it as a video, if you prefer your podcast in audio form, you'll want to subscribe to Living Corporate audio podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We release whatever comes out on Thursday at noon Eastern on my channels, then is released on Friday as an audio podcast on Living Corporate. So you won't want to miss that. And then I will see you again right here next week on Monday at noon Eastern for another Lead at Any Level Live, where I will have more essential skills for inclusive leaders just like you. I hope you all have a great week. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful, if this got you thinking about change differently in your organization, and I will be sure to respond to all of the comments I receive. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great week.